Let's get into we just talked about crude, and if I remember correctly, you mentioned in the past how corn and crude have an interesting correlation. Can you tell us about how one tends to lead the other?
Sure. Thanks, Ben. Corn, a lot of our corn is used for ethanol, and ethanol prices, like crude oil, has been trending sharply higher. And so the processors, despite having higher corn prices, are making pretty good money. But there's historically about a 90% correlation between crude oil prices and corn prices, and very often I watch crude oil as being a lead indicator for where corn prices are going to go.
So Al, beans saw a nice rally into the G20. They posted new highs for the year just last week, but we saw them back below the $9 level again this week as follow through on the first attempt to get above some major resistance around 930 seems to have failed. Is this a sign that the bulls were looking for something more concrete out of the G20? And while we heard of increased purchases to come, details remain few and far between for the most part?
There's the hope that we begin selling a lot more beans again to China. That would be very beneficial to the market because even though Asia and the rest of Southeast Asia is buying more beans, Europe is buying more beans, our year-to-date exports are still running about 200 million bushels behind last year. And so we need to really ramp up the purchases of soybeans from around the world. One of the things that's a real question mark is the African swine fever in China that's decimated 30, maybe 40% of their hog herd. That could have a big impact on the demand not only for soybean meal, but corn prices going forward.
So you've got the issue also, in addition to, lack of follow-through, at least at this point, in terms of purchases from China. Let's talk a little bit about compliance, which is another issue. I mean, even if we do have some sort of resolution of the trade, if China does agree to move forward with increased purchases, I mean, ultimately we have to talk compliance then and checks and balances as well.
That's correct. Yeah, we have a lot of hope that will begin purchases of soybean meal. We have a lot of competition especially from Brazil and Argentina. You mentioned earlier the dollar trading it up at 97. Right now, we're not really competitive in the global export market. And if you're looking just to be the low-cost buyer, you're probably going to be buying soybeans out of both Brazil and Argentina, and you're going to be buying a lot of corn out of the Ukraine right now where they have a very good crop. And so the strength in the dollar, it really has been a detriment to our exports.
I was going to ask you about that because the dollar has been pretty strong, not necessarily skyrocketing, but has it been impacting? Has it been weighing on the grain prices? Because, again, they're holding near highs as well.
Absolutely. We're seeing a real shutdown in the supply of corn potentially. We have planting delays. I don't think we've had this late a planting ever that I can see back, where we've got very low crop conditions. So we have a reduced supply. I think in most years we had a weaker dollar, active export demand. We'd probably be seeing corn at 534 instead of 434. Okay. But the reality is right now we have a lot of competition coming out of South America. We have a reduced crop in the U.S., just a matter of how much the crop has been reduced, but we also have reduced demand. Looking ahead to tomorrow, it would be very interesting to see what the USDA indicates in their acreage and yield for the projections ahead for the crop size in 2019. In August, we'll get an update on the prevent plant acres. And so as I look at it, the grain markets right now are kind of an evolving bull market going forward. This is the anniversary week of when corn futures bottomed in 2018. The nearby contract spiked down to $3.30 a bushel, rallied up into December, and now during the same week, it seems to me like corn prices are undervalued.
So, I was actually in the Midwest doing some traveling, some road tripping this weekend, and I was noticing corn actually looks pretty good. I mean, considering some of the conditions that we dealt with as far as heavy rains, cool temperatures earlier this spring, if you remember, seems like now concerns are that the hot, dry weather over the next few weeks is going to be too much for a crop that's behind in terms of development. What are you hearing as far as that goes?
Yeah, the crop overall looks pretty tough. And when you look at certain regions, I'm not sure where you traveled through. I've traveled through a lot of Iowa, Minnesota lately, and the crop is very small, very much behind normal. The plant population is not what you would want. Because it's been so wet and so cold, we've not seen normal root development. Now I look at the extended forecast, and you take all the way from Omaha to Des Moines, Peoria, Chicago, you could be 92 to 95 degrees for about 10 days. And that's going to be really take a toll on the corn crop because we don't have the normal root system below there. And we're going to go from having too much water to too little water very quickly. And again, I think when we look ahead, what's the ultimate size of the U.S. corn crop? Initially, we were projecting 15 billion bushels, quickly dropped to 14 billion bushels, and some of the research and analysis that we're doing suggests that the total crop size is probably down to 13 billion bushels. So that's a big, big change since the first part of May.
Al, do we still look for knee-high by July? Is that what the saying is? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I think this is a week when we put in the low historically. We look at 2016 and 17, we bottomed in August. 2018, we bottomed during this week in July. And so I'm not sure we'll get new highs in the month of July, but I sure think there's potential for new highs in corn before or right around that August 12th USDA report.